Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys a get ready with me / mid-November reading wrap up. So I'm going to be doing my makeup while talking about the 17 books that I have read so far in November. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right on into it. The first, I want to say 7 or 8 books that I have to talk about, I covered in depth in a recent reading vlog that I did. I'm going to link that up in the cards above. Basically, it was titled like reading mostly historical romances and living my best life. Yeah, I am just still like in shock at how well that video did. It has well over 300 views, which is pretty unusual for my channel, and it got so many views really soon after me posting the video. Usually my videos gain views kind of slowly over time, but that video was pretty popular right away. And I think one of the reasons why that video was so popular is I think people are getting more and more into historical romances in general. Like, people in the romance community are finding a love for historical romance, probably mainly because of the whole Bridgerton phenomenon. I love that people are finding historical romance and are loving it because it's probably my favorite subgenre in the romance genre in general. But yeah, so all that to say, for that reading vlog I read mostly historical romances because in October I hadn't read any, and so I was just like dying to get back into the subgenre, and so I just had such a fun time. Yeah, so because I did a reading vlog about these like first 8 or so books that I read this month, I'm not going to talk too in depth about any of them, but I'm just gonna kind of briefly talk about them and give you my rating and all of that. So let's see, the first book that I want to talk about is A Reckless Match by Kate Bateman. This is her latest release. It is the first book in a new series by her. I can't remember what the series is called, but it essentially centers around these two feuding families. But yeah, we have the Davies and the Montgomerys. These two families have been feuding for hundreds of years, so yeah, obviously it's going to remind you of, you know, Romeo and Juliet. And something about Kate Bateman that I keep forgetting to bring up whenever I talk about her books is how genius she is at writing banter. Oh my goodness. So I've read 4 books by her at this point. I read her entire most recent series, and I can't remember what that series is called either, but the last book in that series is The Princess and the Rogue, which is like an Anastasia retelling. And just all 4 books that I've read by her, the banter is just delicious and delectable. She has a unique writing style in that way. And I give this 5 stars. It was just so fun. We have Maddie and Griff, our hero and heroine. You know, one of them is a Davies, one of them is a Montgomery. And yes, they've like hated each other all their lives, but like not really. And this kind of enemies to lovers dynamic is just so much fun. So the next book I have to talk about is The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shupe. Funny, really funny side note about this book real quick is that you might notice that the font on this title makes the L in Lucky look like an F. I know that I'm not the only one who's noticed that, and my mom was convinced that this was an F. And so when she watched my most recent reading vlog, because she does watch my videos, she was like low-key pissed at me that I was raving about a book that would use the F word in the title. So I just wanted to tell you guys that because I was dying laughing when she told me that. Oh my god, so funny. But this is book 2 in her Fifth Avenue Rebels series. I have not read book 1, The Heiress Hunt. I talked about this a lot in my reading vlog. I've just heard so many like mixed and negative reviews about that book that I really just don't plan on ever reading it. But this book, you guys, was absolutely fantastic. If you watched my reading vlog, I swear I raved about this book for like a solid 10 minutes in that vlog. Like, that book is probably the reason that vlog is so long, because it's over like a 50-minute reading vlog. This is one of those stories and I'm obsessed with this trope. I need to do a recommendations video soon for it because it's definitely one of my favorite tropes ever. But it's one of those situations where we have our heroine Alice. She's a very shy, like, wallflower. By the way, Joanna Shupe's romances take place in the Gilded Age in New York City, so that's the 1890s era. And so yeah, we have Alice. She goes to our hero Kit, who is like this ladies' man, because they're at this house party together in Newport, and she asks him to give her seduction lessons because she wants to attract a husband, mainly to get away from her unbearable mother. And so Kit is, of course, very shocked by this proposition because he doesn't know Alice all that well, but she seems obviously like a very shy person, and the fact that, like, she's asking him for lessons like this, like, that's absolutely nuts, right? And it just goes on from there. This truly is Joanna Shupe at her finest. I need to stop talking about these books so long because I talked about them so much in that reading vlog. I'm just so excited about these books. They were both so phenomenal. Of course, I'm giving this 5 stars. This one is definitely one of my top favorite historical romances of the year. All right, so let's move it along, little doggy, moving forward. Okay, so next I read The Governor's Game by Tessa Dare. This was my first time rereading this book. I gave it 5 stars, just like I did the first time. The shining star in this book, I always say this whenever I talk about this book, is the 2 children, Daisy and Rosamond. Yeah, they're absolutely fantastic. The romance is fine. It's nothing amazing for Tessa Dare, but it's such a fun book. Next book that I read for that reading vlog was His and Hers by Alice Feeney. This book was definitely kind of the outlier in that reading vlog because this is an adult thriller, whereas everything else I read for that vlog, like I said, was historical romances. But this is the second book that I've read by this author. I gave it 4 stars. It was pretty solid. Not as good as Rock, Paper, Scissors, which is her most recent release. And I've said this before, but something odd about Alice Feeney's writing style is that I just feel like she includes like one too many plot twists right at the end, and it just ruins the story a little bit for me. And in this book, I was definitely more bothered by it than in Rock, Paper, Scissors. But this is essentially about a divorced couple, and this murder happens in the small town that they're both from. The ex-husband, Jack, he is a detective in the police force, and then I believe the main character's name was Anna or Amy or something. She is a broadcast journalist, and so Jack believes that Anna, his ex-wife, is somehow involved in this murder. Next up, we have Annie's Song. This was a historical romance that I was really, really excited about going into because Jen from the Book Refuge just raved and raved and raved about it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it as much as I hoped it would. And I always hate when I go into books with really high expectations because, I mean, not most of the time, but definitely oftentimes those expectations will not be met. So I just like need to curb my expectations when going into books. That's just like so frustrating. But this is also a really heavy book because we are centering around our main character Annie. This takes place in the 1890s in Oregon, and so everybody in town, including her family, thinks that Annie is like touched or mentally disabled in some way. They can't recognize that she's actually deaf. And at the very beginning of the novel, she gets raped by this guy Douglas, and Douglas's older brother Alex is the hero of the story. And to make things right, he essentially goes to Annie's family and proposes marrying Annie. And there were things that I definitely enjoyed about this story. There were really beautiful moments between Annie and Alex, but it just didn't quite meet my high expectations. I also felt like the pacing just overall could have been better. Next, I read this duet by Lisa Kleypas. The first book is Then Came You, and the second book is Dreaming of You. So Then Came You, oh my goodness, one of my top 2 favorite books that I've ever read by Lisa Kleypas at this point, even though admittedly I haven't read like that many books by Lisa Kleypas, but of the ones that I have read, this one is definitely in the top. And it's one of her older historical romances, so I did go into this just a little bit wary because I feel like a lot of us have this view of older historicals, so historicals that were published before the year 2000. I feel like a lot of us have this view of older historicals that there's going to be like consent issues, really problematic things going on. And I will say that there are some problematic things going on in both of these books. They were published in the mid-90s, but I don't know how to word it, but I just feel like the messy and kind of problematic things going on in both of these books made them all the better. Especially Then Came You, the first book in this little duet. Like, I just absolutely adored this book with all of my heart. But just to tell you the basic premise, this is about Lily. She comes across as just this like shallow party girl in London, and she loves to just shock London society. Like, the first scene is literally her on a yacht at this party with all these people, including the King of England himself, and she jumps off the boat into the Thames to go after her hat that fell into the river. So absolutely iconic. Basically, our hero, Lord Rayford, Alex is his first name. He is engaged to Lily's younger sister, and her younger sister Penelope is in love with somebody else, and so Lily takes it upon herself to sabotage this engagement so that Penelope can be with the man that she truly wants to be with instead of Alex, Lord Rayford. And Alex is the seemingly very uptight, arrogant man, kind of like the opposite of Lily. And so this is just one of the most amazing hate to love situations, because there is a passion behind how much these two people hate each other. But there's also some kind of like funny and lighthearted element to it. Like, yes, there's animosity, but it's entertaining. I don't know how to explain it. But it is just absolutely everything. And Lily has some dark secrets from her past. There's definitely a lot of angst. This book gets very messy. This hero and heroine definitely hurt each other along the way, but the journey is just so worth it. It's absolutely fantastic. And then Dreaming of You, book 2, I was really hyped. Again, going into books with really high expectations, I need to stop doing that, because I went into this with the highest of expectations, because people will not shut up about how amazing Derek Craven is, our hero in this one, and just how incredible this book is in general. Like, most Lisa Kleypas fans, like, that's their favorite Lisa Kleypas book. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. The premise was so good, though. We have Sarah, our heroine. She is an author. And she is in this really bad neighborhood in London because she's doing research for a new novel. So she sees our hero Derek getting beat up in an alley, and she always carries a gun with her, and so she ends up shooting one of the men attacking him, and so they flee. So she essentially saves Derek's life, and things going from there. Derek is this gambling den owner. He is a very rough man. He has had a very tough childhood. He's one of these kind of typical historical romance heroes where he's very reluctant to love. And I think at the end of the day, I just expected more from Derek. I liked him, I didn't love him, and the pacing of this was kind of slow the whole time. I found myself zoning out, so yeah, 3.5 stars. Next up, I'm so excited about this book. This is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is a book that is really hyped up on TikTok at the moment, or probably has been for a while. I'm not really on TikTok all that often, so I don't really know, but I've just heard from other booktubers that this is very hyped on TikTok. And for good reason. This is a fake dating situation. It's also kind of been marketed as Reylo fan fiction. I don't know that it really is, because I've never watched Star Wars, don't kill me, but yeah. And so yeah, this one is about our hero Adam. He is a professor at this university, and then our heroine Olive, who is a PhD at the same university. They're not really in the same department, so when they start fake dating, it's not like all that forbidden or scandalous. And yeah, this is just like grumpy hero fake dating perfection. So good. The vibe was there. I loved the writing. I'm really excited to see what Ali Hazelwood comes out with next. I of course had to give this one 5 stars. So yeah, those were all of the books that I read for that reading vlog that I posted recently. So like I already stated, if you want more in-depth thoughts about any of those books, definitely just check out that vlog. But the next book that I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Talk about a really hyped up book. I specifically read that book for a reading vlog that I'm working on. It's kind of a secret. I don't want to reveal what the theme is quite yet. You'll know when I post it though, why I read that book. Let me tell you right now, I will die on this hill this book is not a romance novel. You can't convince me that it's a romance novel. It is adult fiction. There is romance involved. It's a love triangle kind of situation, but it is not a romance novel, and I will explain why right now. We have Lily, our main character. And this is told kind of in like a dual timeline, kind of, because we'll get like flashbacks from her past when we're reading like her past journal entries, and then we're having the present. And so in the present, she meets this guy, Ryle Kincaid, who is a neurosurgeon, and they eventually get into a romantic relationship. They kind of quickly end up getting married too. And I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler. I feel like you should know this going into it. Basically what happens is that Ryle starts abusing Lily. And this story focuses a lot on like the cycle of abuse, because Lily's mother was abused a lot when Lily was growing up by Lily's father. And so in her past flashbacks, like in her journal entries, we're seeing the abuse that her father is inflicting on her mother. And then in present day, we're starting to see the same kind of thing happening to Lily. It's a really tough book to read. And this book primarily focuses on Lily's life journey and how she's dealing with this abuse. And like, you know, it's easy to judge people that are in these kind of situations from the outside. It's easy to be like, oh, you should leave him the first time he hits you, like, you know, but in Lily's story, you truly see like all the different shades of gray, because like the first time Ryle hits her, it kind of seems like it was an accident almost. Like it, you know, it definitely like shocked me and it shocked Lily, and you know, it didn't seem like it was abusive. And so then when it happens again, it's like, oh wait, is this a cycle now? Like, what is going on? And so you're like right there with Lily as she's experiencing this relationship. And then also from the past, we're seeing this relationship that Lily had with this teenage boy, Atlas, because the past timeline is happening when Lily was also a teenager. And Atlas was a homeless teen, and so we see Lily help him out and also fall in love with him. And then in present day, they end up back in each other's lives. And so it's like a love triangle situation. Yeah, I discussed this book and what I think about it a lot in the reading vlog that I'm working on, so I'm not going to talk about it too much in this video, but I did end up giving it 5 stars. Yeah, definitely go into this book with some caution, but I think it's beautifully written. This was also a very personal project for Colleen Hoover, because her own mother was abused, and I just think it's so beautiful how Colleen Hoover took that pain and put it into this amazing novel. So next up, I'm going to talk about a whole historical romance series that I pretty much binged in the last week or so, and that is the Hellions of Havisham series by Lorraine Heath. This is a series, it is like a companion romance novel series. It includes 3 full novels and a novella. And so the first book is Falling into Bed with a Duke. So this series basically centers around these 4 men who are best friends, and they're also members of the aristocracy. We have Ash, who's a duke. This is his story. Book 2 is about these twin brothers. One of them is an earl. And then book 3 is about their other friend, who is a viscount. So yes, this first book centers around Ash. And when he was very young, his parents were killed in a train accident. Yes, I believe so, a train accident. And this is very odd. Like, his character story and his character in general is very odd, because yes, he's very traumatized, obviously, from like losing his parents, but he wasn't at the scene. Like, he didn't see this accident happen. However, he, like, his imagination got the better of him, and he has just, like, all of his life since finding out about his parents' death, he's been having these nightmares where he imagines this very horrific accident happening, and like these bodies being in very bad condition, I guess you can say, like all of the people that were killed in this accident. And this somehow leads him to develop a foot and leg fetish. It's explained much better in the book than I could ever explain to you, but it's still very weird. But I wanted to kind of like set that up for you. So then basically we are now in present day, and we see that Ash goes to this sex club, and the women of the society that go to this sex club, they wear masks to be anonymous because you know, during this time, this takes place in like the 1870s in London. It was still very scandalous for women to be seen in these kinds of environments, whereas like men, it didn't matter. So the men don't wear masks, but the women do. And so, yeah, he meets this woman, Minerva, who is a spinster, and she just wants to experience life, and her friend tells her about this sex club. And so they meet, sparks fly, and yeah, like a relationship ensues between the two of them. And this, what was fun about this one is seeing Ash trying to figure out who this mystery woman is. She calls herself Lady V, so he's trying to figure out who Lady V is. And so meanwhile in real life, he's going to these balls and soirees and things, and he's seeing Minerva in real life and kind of forming a relationship with her in real life. And it's kind of cool to see them dance around each other because Minerva doesn't want him to figure out that she's Lady V, and so that was fun. I ended up giving this 4 stars though. I wasn't like in love with this romance and with these characters, but like I still had a good time with it. Like I said, Ash's backstory is very odd. Like he's kind of just an odd main character. I liked Minerva, didn't love her. I will say what I adored about Minerva is her family, because her stepfather Jack and her mother, they have their own romance novel that Lorraine Heath wrote, but I'm really excited to read their book that's a part of that like Devil series. All I know is it's the one with the red cover. Sorry that that's not helpful. It was really cool to see Jack as a stepfather. He runs this gambling hell, and Minerva's mother also seems like a really cool person. So yeah, I'm just really excited to get to their romance. And then the second book in this series, I jumped into this one pretty much straight away, is The Earl Takes All. And oh my goodness, y'all, Lorraine Heath is the queen of coming up with these just like bonkers stories, but they somehow always work out, and they somehow are like always amazing. So we have this set of twins, Albert and Edward. Like I said, they are best friends with Ash, the hero from book 1, and they ended up growing up with Ash because their parents, I think, passed away in that same train accident or something. And so they all end up living together with the Marquis of Marsden, who is rumored to be like this mad Marquis, and we actually get his story in the novella that's a part of the series, so I'll get to that later. And so in book 1, Falling into Bed with the Duke, we see the setup of that Albert does end up getting married to this woman Julia. He is in love with her, and Edward is not very nice to her, mainly because he feels that Julia is taking his twin brother Albert like away from him. And what's really cool about this series too is that the Hellions of Havisham, these 4 guys, like they loved going on these adventures together, like these safaris and things like that. And so yeah, Julia and Albert are married, Edward is not. Edward takes Albert on like this like one last hurrah trip, and then Edward swears that he will settle down and find a wife if they just go on this one last trip together. And what happens is that Albert ends up getting killed by a gorilla, and the way that that gorilla attack is described is kind of horrific. Like that was one of the many things in this book that made me cry. Yeah, I mean, this book was just all kinds of emotional, all kinds of angsty. And so basically, while Albert is dying from this attack, he tells Edward to go back to London and pretend to be him to Julia, so that Julia won't lose the baby, so that, you know, she won't go into distress and lose the baby. And yeah, like, isn't that the most like bonkers plot you've ever heard in a historical romance? Basically, Edward comes back with Albert's body, but they fake Edward's death to explain the body that has come home with him. So everybody believes Edward to be dead when Edward is really alive and pretending to be Albert. And so Edward basically like slowly falls in love with Julia throughout the book. Even though this plot was so crazy, this is easily one of the most romantic historical romances that I've ever read. So angsty, but just so beautiful, so stunning at the same time. But like the way Lorraine Heath writes it, like you can't help but root for this couple and the way that their happily ever after comes together. And Lorraine Heath is the queen of writing these situations where a happily ever after just doesn't seem possible. And then at the very end, the happily ever after like comes in clutch, like at the 98% mark. And every time it's just amazing. It's just so stunning the way that Edward literally sacrifices his life, right? Because everybody believes him to be dead. He sacrifices everything to care for Julia and her child and to be with Julia and to love her. And then the way that Julia falls back in love with him, like, it is so good. I cried so much while reading this. I have never cried so much for a historical romance as I did for this one. Next book in the series, I'm just going to talk about all of these books at once, is the Viscount and the Vixen. And so in this one, we are getting Locke's story. He is a Viscount. And throughout this series, we see glimpses of him and his father, who's the Marquis of Marsden. Everybody believes Marsden to just be mad because he essentially lost his wife when she was giving birth to Locke, and he was just so in love with his Marchioness that he kind of lost his mind when she passed away. And so now we're in present day. Marsden is definitely up in age. He's probably at least in his 60s or 70s. Okay, I just adore the setup of this, but Marsden, basically to push his son Locke into marrying someone, he's been corresponding with this woman Portia because he put an ad in the paper seemingly that he's looking for a wife, but really he's looking for a wife for his son Locke. And so Portia shows up. She is under the impression that she's going to marry this old man and become a Marchioness and have you know, the stability of marrying into the aristocracy. And then Locke is like, absolutely not. You're trying to take advantage of this old man, so you're marrying me instead. And like I said, that was his father's plan all along. Like, I just love, I love that his dad was just meddling in his business. And so this is kind of a dislike to love story because Locke is just very suspicious of Portia and her motives. They also just can't help but fall in love with each other over the course of this book. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought it was very solid, just not nearly as amazing as The Earl Takes All, which was the previous book of the series. And so then the last installment in this series is a novella. This is called When the Marquis Falls. And so I was like low-key scared going into this novella because this is the story of Marsden, the Marquis of Marsden, and how he fell in love with Linny, who was his wife, who ended up dying in childbirth, giving birth to Locke. So I obviously, like, I knew it was going to be a tragic ending. Also, something I quickly want to mention about the Viscount and the Vixen is the epilogue is literally one of the best epilogues I have ever read in a historical romance. It made me tear up. It has something to do with Marsden and his wife Linny that passed away, and it was just like so good. So yeah, this is their story. This novella is their romance, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I feel like if you tried reading this novella without reading the 3 previous books of the series, you're definitely not going to enjoy it as much. It's not going to impact you as much as it will if you read the first 3 full novels. So yeah, I still really enjoyed it. The ending of this novella, of course, is very rough because it has to do with him eventually losing his wife and him growing older without her. Like, obviously there's, you know, it's very tragic, but it's also very beautiful, and it does have a happy ending. It does have a happily ever after, but just like not any kind of traditional happily ever after. So, you know, the ending was beautiful. I am an idiot. Hello, everybody. This is Editing Rachel coming at you because I completely forgot to talk about 2 books that I read in the past couple of weeks. This video is not going well for me. Okay, so the first one I quickly want to mention is The Good Girl by Shiloh Clark. This is a pen name that Jack Harbin uses, I guess, to write his like pure smut series. I DNF'd this at 43%, but the premise is we have our main character who is having money troubles because of her fiance who's a dumbass, and so she decides to go into the auction, which is where she auctions herself for a night to these really rich people. And so she starts this kind of weird relationship with this guy. I think his name was Alesso or Alessio. And there's like lots of daddy kink involved and cheating, obviously, because she has a fiance. And like, this was just mediocre in so many ways. The smut, the characters, I just didn't really care, so I DNF'd it. And then the other book that I forgot to talk about is The Clover Chapel. This is book 2 in Devney Perry's Jameson Valley series. This is a second chance romance. I was really excited about it because this was about our hero and heroine who met in Vegas. They got married, and then the morning after, the hero just leaves her. And so then it jumps to 9 years later when our heroine moves to this small town, Jameson Valley, and her husband Nick is there. They never actually got divorced. So yeah, that's her husband. And so things go on from there. I love the premise. The first half of this was very strong, very solid. But the second half of this book just quickly lost steam for me. And I'm just disappointed because I really enjoyed book 1 of this series, which is called The Coppersmith Farmhouse. I would definitely recommend that book, but this book really was not it. So I gave it 3 stars. So I'm gonna hand it back to past Rachel now. All right, so the next book I want to discuss is Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. I was really excited going into this book because Bree from In Love and Words, I will of course link her channel down in the description. She raved about this one recently. She is Mia Sheridan's like biggest fan, and I am quickly becoming one of Mia Sheridan's biggest fans as well. I have now read 3 of her books and really loved 2 of them, and I really enjoyed this one. I didn't love it as much as the other 2 books that I've read by her, but I still really enjoyed it. The premise of this one is really unique in my mind, and it just is absolutely everything. So we have Ellie. She is a stripper. Her stage name is Crystal. And I do want to point out right away that she does not enjoy being a stripper. We have Ellie, and then this guy, Gabriel, walks in to the strip club that she's working at, and he comes up to her and asks her to give him lessons, or I guess lessons isn't the right word, but to help him be more comfortable around women and around women touching him and him touching women, because he has a very tragic backstory. He was kidnapped when he was very young, and he was kept captive for years and years. And so he just doesn't really feel comfortable around people in general, but he wants to be able to feel comfortable around women because he's attracted to women and he wants to eventually be in a romantic relationship. And so yeah, he goes to Crystal for help. Content warning, big content warning for sexual assault and rape and obviously like kidnapping because of Gabriel's past. And this was a really beautiful romance. I did feel like the pacing was slow at times. So I think that's the main reason why I didn't give this 5 stars, but I did really enjoy it. Like I said, beautiful writing as usual with Mia Sheridan, and it's just like a beautiful story, but very hard to read at times as well because you know, Ellie has a very tragic past with sexual assault, but also like throughout the book, pretty awful things happen to her like in present day. This is also a really great recommendation if you love cinnamon roll heroes. That's definitely who Gabriel is. He falls for Ellie first, and he falls hard. And the scene where he confesses his love for Ellie is just absolutely everything. And yeah, he's just like this sweet guy, and I love that Ellie viewed him as her angel. Like, he's just this angelic person. And then the last book that I want to discuss is the new Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. So this is one of the nonfiction books that I put on my list of 21 books that I want to read in 2021. I will link that video up in the cards above. I actually just have a couple of books left to read off of that list, which is pretty amazing. Reading nonfiction is really important for my own education about the world around me and about topics that I didn't learn about in school. And definitely mass incarceration is one of the things that I never really learned about in school, but it is a very important issue that I think we all need to learn about. And this is the perfect book to start with in terms of educating yourself about the topic. You know, in a lot of ways, this book really only scratches the surface when it comes to mass incarceration, and Michelle Alexander makes a point of telling the reader that. And this was the 10th anniversary edition because this was originally written in 2010. And so for the 10th anniversary edition, she did a whole new like introduction or preface to the book, you know, mainly because a lot of things have changed in the past 10 years. When this book was written, Obama was president, and now, you know, we've gone through 2 more presidents since then, right? Or we're going through 2 more presidents since then. I am now done getting ready, but yes, going back to the new Jim Crow really quick. It might seem really hyperbolic for this author to say that mass incarceration is the new Jim Crow, but throughout the book, it really makes more and more sense as you keep reading. And yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. This book will make you angry, it will make you think, and that's what it was designed to do. And it's really just like the beginning of the discussion. So I can't recommend this enough. I of course gave it 5 stars. All right, guys, that's going to be it for the 17 books that I read in the first half of November. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!